Do you know the oldest thing you own? It isn't in your house, it's in your mouth. In this episode, we are going to track down the fossils hiding in your everyday vocabulary. We'll find out why the word wheel is actually a Bronze Age sound effect, why ordering salmon proves our linguistic ancestors came from ancient Russia, and why a guest is the exact same thing as a ghost. You are walking around with a museum in your head and you don't even know it. This time, we are going way back. The oldest words in our vocabulary are the first words that come out of our mouths. This makes total sense now, but I honestly didn't realize it until researching it. If you open and close your mouth, relax your jaw, don't use your tongue or your teeth, what happens when you just push sound out from your throat? What happens? Ah, ma. Mother. In English, it's mother. In Latin, mater. In Sanskrit, mater. In Old Irish, mather. This isn't a coincidence. It is the first sound. It is the sound of life sustaining itself. And what about the second sound? Once the baby is fed, it looks outward. It sees the protector. It makes a harder sound. Pa, da, papa, dada, abba, baba. Okay, that last one comes with a bit of drool with it. Across the entire globe, from Hindi to Russian to English, these two words, ma and pa, are almost identical. Scientists believe these words haven't changed in over 6,000 years. When you say mom or dad, you aren't speaking English. You are speaking the language of Bronze Age steppe herders. So yeah, today we are going to look at the words that refuse to die. We are going to track down the wheel, the whiskey, and the ghost hiding in your vocabulary. And by the end of this video, you'll realize that you are actually a time traveler that's just a mouth, or something like that. We live in the future. We drive cars. We fly planes. We obsess over technology. But the word for our greatest invention is kind of making fun of it. Think of the wheel. To us, it's a shape, a circle. But to our ancestors 6,000 years ago, it was an approaching sound. In the ancient mother tongue, Proto-Indo-European, the word for wheel was quequelos. Que-que-los. It is an onomatopoeia. It mimics the stuttering, rumbling sound of a heavy wooden disc rolling over rocks. Cyclos, cycle, circle. It's different enough that it's almost unrecognizable, huh? But in the past, we didn't just stick to copying sounds. We invented a way to distinguish one thing from another. We needed a name. We asked and pointed. Name? In Latin, nomen. In Sanskrit, namen. Even in Japanese, which is supposedly unrelated, it's namae. So why has this Proto-Indo-European word, nam, survived for 60 centuries? It's not random. The act of naming things is the fundamental spark of human consciousness. To name something is to categorize it, to define it. We have been pointing at things and saying nomen for so long that the word itself has burned a physical groove into the human brain. Amazing. Okay, so we have universal sounds like ma/pa, and tech sounds like name and circle. But here's where the ancient words clue us into the geography of the ancestor of English. A single word can tell us where these ancestors lived. It's the word lox. You know, smoked salmon. All this time, I thought it was just delicatessen lingo, but lox comes from the ancient root lox, meaning salmon. That means they couldn't have lived in the desert. They couldn't have lived in the tropics. Salmon only swim in specific cold rivers in the northern hemisphere. So, just by looking at their lunch menu, we can pinpoint their area on a map. We know they lived in the Pontic-Caspian steppes, and we know what they feared. Volkvo, or the wolf. It sounds like a growl. We can paint their entire world just by looking at the words that survived. So the Proto-Indo-Europeans, or PIE for short, they lived in a cold, river-filled land, riding quequelos, eating lox, and fearing the Volkvo. Hope you're feeling as time-displaced as me right now. And since they lived by the rivers, naturally, they had a word for the most vital substance on Earth. Water. In PIE, it was vodor, or vedor. It meant wet or fluid. But here's a fun side quest. As the tribes moved east into Russia, the word voda, water, got a diminutive ending. A cute little nickname. Voda became vodka. It literally means little water. Just a little sip is enough, right? And the tribes that moved west, to the British Isles? In Gaelic, they took the word uska. Say it fast. Uska, uski, whiskey. So whether you are drinking a vodka martini or a whiskey sour, linguistically, you are just ordering a glass of water. If the barman gives you something else, well, you shouldn't waste it. But life wasn't just about survival. It was about dealing with other people too. Imagine you were in that hut 6,000 years ago. There's a knock at the door. It's a stranger. Is he here to trade? Or is he here to kill you? In PIE, the word for this stranger was ghosty. Yup. This single word, ghosty, is the root of one of the weirdest paradoxes in English. Because ghosty meant reciprocal relationship. If the stranger is friendly, you give him food. He becomes a guest. If you are the one giving the food, you are the host. Both words, guest and host, come from ghosty. Classic weird English. And that's not all. If the interaction goes sideways, if the stranger attacks, ghosty becomes hostile. Or it becomes a hostage situation. All these from one word. But I saved the best for last. In the Germanic branch, ghosty took a darker turn. It became gast, which eventually became ghost. A ghost is just a guest, from the other side, a stranger visiting your house who doesn't belong. So they feared the wolf. They welcomed the guest. But who did they worship? They looked up. They saw the bright sky, the day. In PIE, the word for shine or day was dew, and the word for father was pater. So the name of their god was Deus Pater, Sky Father. PIE feels so familiar, doesn't it? Now watch what happens when the tribes split up and move across the world. In Greek, Deus Pater gets slurred together. Zeus Pater. Zeus. In Latin, the D sound softens. Deus Pater. Jupater. Jupiter. And in the abstract, Deus became Deus, which gives us deity and divine. So the word for God is hidden in our calendar, our planets, and our prayers. By Zeus. So who were these people? We don't have their bones, we don't have their statues, they never wrote a single word down. But we have their ghost. We call it Proto-Indo-European, but really, it's just us. We think we are different, we fight wars over borders, we argue over politics, but beneath the surface, the CEO in London and the monk in Tibet are both speaking broken dialects of the same ghost language, like long-lost cousins. That's wild to think about. Okay, so just so I can answer how we know all this, the answer is totally different from what I imagined. I thought linguists had gone to Western Asia and just talked to people, but it's a bit more complicated than that. They found it by lining up old written languages like Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, and early Germanic, and noticing that the same sound changes kept happening over and over in basic words, like Latin P consistently showing up as English F. Once those patterns were clear, they worked backward by inferring the smallest set of earlier sounds that would naturally turn into all the later forms. In other words, they treated languages like a puzzle, where the same pieces keep changing shape in predictable ways. And if one solution fit hundreds of pieces at once, that was the root. That inferred sound system is what we call Proto-Indo-European. Then archaeology and genetics came later and corroborated it. The next time you say name, or water, or mom, remember, you are keeping a 6,000-year-old flame alive. And as long as you keep speaking, the ghosts of your ancestors will never die. So even though the Proto-Indo-Europeans were kind of transactional and didn't have a word for it, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more.